Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Jade-Isis Lefebvre and I'm a psychologist. I work at Concordia as counseling and psychological services. Today's video will focus on dating and intimate relationships within the context of the current COVID pandemic. One of the reasons why it's important to talk about this is because research shows that romantic relationships are key determinants of well-being and mental health in individuals between 18 and 30 years old, which we call emerging adulthood. So it's really important to discuss these topics and to shed light on some of the issues that some of our students and maybe general population are dealing with within the context of COVID. So as we get started, it's important to understand all of the issues that I'm going to be talking about within the context of relational self-awareness. This is a term coined by Dr. Alexandra Solomon. This is the idea that we show up to our relationships with our past, present, and future, with all of these thoughts and experiences. So the more that we understand ourselves and the more that we're aware of our own perspectives, issues, ways of seeing things, we actually show up much better in our relationship. So relationships can, as she says, shake us up and can challenge us in many ways. When those challenges occur, relational self-awareness and the way that we are in this relationship can really help support us depending on what we come across. In addition, it's important to have developed self-compassion. Self-compassion can allow us to better understand our context, be a lot kinder to ourselves and others in moments of difficulty, and it helps remind us that it's part of the human experience for us to be able to suffer, have difficulties, and overcome challenges. The most important part of self-compassion is treating ourselves with kindness when we're feeling maybe less proud of ourselves or when we feel we've had difficulties, and also being aware of the moments that we aren't being self-compassionate, so having mindfulness to be able to better understand our circumstance. The three types of relationship contexts I'm going to talk about today will also cover different strategies for each context. The strategies are actually applicable to a lot of different types of situations, but I'll really focus on a few of the situations that I've been noticing have been most common with my students. So the first context is dating during COVID. As if dating in 2020 wasn't hard enough, COVID has made things a lot more complicated, especially for online dating. Online dating is actually one of the best ways to be able to connect with people during COVID. So if you're feeling maybe that you would like to make new connections, I would recommend moving towards online dating. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. I've seen on social media where people actually build different connections through events. So there's lots of different ways to enjoy social media and also enjoy online dating during a COVID pandemic. And it's also maybe the time to start if you have never tried online dating before or been a little bit scared. One of my students actually set up an online blind date for one of their friends, and it went really well. So there's lots of different ways that we can work around online dating during COVID. One of the other issues that some of my students are seeing during COVID is feelings of isolation, especially if they're not in a romantic relationship. If this is something that you're experiencing, sometimes shifting your perspective in understanding this circumstance as an opportunity for you to grow and to heal and to understand yourself better. If you're curious about the idea of relational self-awareness, you might actually want to read Dr. Alexandra's book called Loving Bravely. During the pandemic, you may have a little bit more time to do some reading and to really consider what makes you who you are, what you would like as a partner, who you would like to be with, what kind of life you would both like to live. And what I really like about her book is that it allows you to better understand your past, present, and future to be able to show up and be an even better partner. I also will link a PowerPoint to this conversation so that you can be able to see more specifically the resources that I'm talking about. On the PowerPoint, there's also a really great YouTube video about loneliness and how loneliness is actually impacting us today. So if that's something you're struggling with, you're not alone. It is something that many individuals have difficulties with across the lifespan, and it's also one of the most difficult experiences, I would say, alongside grief for a human, because it's part of our biology, it's part of our evolution. We love and we need to feel connected in order to be feeling happy and well. So perhaps you found yourself in this really great relationship, you see this person however many times a week that you want, then boom, the pandemic hits and you're now in a long distance relationship, though you live close by. This is a really difficult context because it was unplanned. Maybe you have things at their home. Maybe you haven't really figured out how to communicate in the context of a long distance relationship. So two of the main issues that I'm seeing for my students and for my clients that are in long distance pandemic situations is, the first topic would be ambivalence. So sometimes, I don't know if you've heard the quote, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Sometimes having space between the person and more time to reflect actually leads to more feelings of ambivalence and doubt. So what I would say around this circumstance is to really consider the type of relationship that you are in. Are you in a healthy or unhealthy relationship? How are your levels of trust? Asking yourself questions about what this person brings to your life. Do your values align? And really be honest with yourself. Maybe take some time to journal or to talk to someone that you really trust to be able to discuss the way that you're feeling. And you can maybe even connect with your partner and share this with them. So one of my strategies for this would be to look at Brené Brown's video called The Anatomy of Trust. She uses an acronym called BRAVING to break down each element of trust. And oftentimes, if we understand which element we're struggling with, we can actually move forward in a much healthier way, and even use this as a communication piece with our partners to be able to understand maybe what elements of trust are lacking. On this PowerPoint that I'm talking about, I also have a reflection exercise with certain questions you may be able to ask yourself in your journaling practice. So I recommend you take a look at that as well. In a long distance relationship, one of the issues that is most difficult for individuals is feeling connected to your partner. Being far away makes it a lot harder for you to nurture and refuel your relationship. One of the best strategies that I would say around long distance relationships would be understanding both individuals' love languages. So if you don't know what that is, there's 5 ways that research shows that we show love and receive love, either to with a partner, with a parent, with a child, with a dog, or even with yourself. So by understanding your love language, oftentimes what happens is we're not speaking the same language between partners. So I recommend you look online, take the quiz, see what your love language is, and then tailor your love language, the way that you show it and receive it, based off of your long distance relationship. So the 5 love languages that have been identified are acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, and giving gifts. Words of affirmation is just showing with words the way that you feel about the person and connecting with them on that level. Giving gifts would be buying really thoughtful little gifts or big gifts sometimes that help you relate and respond to the person. Quality time is spending time with that person, which can look like really different. So maybe drawing together, or going on a date, or watching a movie and then connecting about it after. Physical touch isn't just sex, it's also the way that you put your hand on the person's back, or that you lean into them for a hug, or the way that you connect with them physically. And lastly, acts of service is doing things that actually help support the person and that make them feel seen. For example, doing the dishes if they have a really busy night, or making dinner for them. Now, these are really hard things to do when you're not close to the person. So tailoring them specifically to a long distance relationship can be really helpful. For example, if you're dating someone who is a physical touch person, then perhaps if you can mail them one of your shirts. Yeah, I really like that idea. The person can then, depending on the size, can then wear the shirt and it can feel almost like a hug. If it's a gift, you can maybe send them a surprise. If it's words of affirmation, you can connect through letter writing. Quality time, you can draw, paint, cook, do anything that you do in your normal life at the same time. And acts of service would be maybe helping them with their taxes, or helping them do something while you're connecting together in a long distance format. So what's really important in this context is that you both communicate together about how you can nurture the relationship while being far apart, and your expectations will really change based off of this too. You won't be able to connect maybe as often or maybe differently each time. So that's something to really consider with your partner as you negotiate and discuss what it means to be together during this COVID circumstance. That leads me into the last context that we need to talk about today. So that would be being full-time together, working from home, studying from home, living together full-time, and navigating what it looks like to be always together. Now, you may really love the person, but you may also need your own space. So the first element that I find is difficult for some of my students and some of my clients is the balance between intimacy and time together and time apart. A really important way to discuss this is to have a conversation with your partner around what their expectations are for sharing time together and what that might look like. And by navigating each other's expectations, you'll be a lot more clear in terms of what each of you needs. One of my favorite resources for intimacy, sex, and just discussing maybe some taboo topics is Juliet Allen's The Authentic Sex podcast. And intimacy, we have to remember, can be really difficult, not just from a sexual perspective, but from a relational perspective. So really understanding what it's like for you to be full-time with your partner. Also within a context that is really scary and really stressful. The COVID pandemic has made us adapt to so many different circumstances, and that can lead to maybe more conflict or more stress in the relationship because each individual is themselves experiencing stress or concerns or worries about their family or what it's like, or staying at home all the time and adapting, which is a lot of change and can create a lot of dissonance or just some emotional reactions. And then sometimes it can create lots of fires between the partnership because we lean on each other in those moments that are difficult. So the element that I find other individuals are struggling with is communication and boundaries. This is a really important topic for all types of relationships. So if you're dating, this is actually a really good time to build communication. Same thing with long distance. Having a foundation of communication can be built during this time and can maybe translate after this circumstance too, which would lead to an even stronger foundation with you and your partner. So some of the strategies for communication are using nonviolent communication strategies, and you can look at these up online, but really speaking from a place of your personal experience, using emotional language in a way that's really respectful, having a calm tone. So rather than saying, when you do this, you might want to say something, I feel hurt and sad when this happens. And what this does is it allows your partner to feel a lot more compassionate to your experience, and it helps you both align together in the struggles that you're having. So the thing with communication though and setting boundaries is that it can be really scary depending on your past experiences. Maybe when you've tried to communicate or set boundaries in the past, you haven't been received in a way that has been healing or helpful. So it takes a lot of courage to start communicating honestly and clearly with your partner in a way that's calm and respectful. One of the resources that I like a lot for communication and boundary setting is the Holistic Psychologist. So she has an Instagram page. There's, of course, a ton of research on all of these topics that I've talked about today. So if you have any more questions or if you're curious about anything, feel free to just, do a quick search and go on your university webpage and look for the library, look at different topics. So there's probably a lot of other issues that you may be seeing and a lot of other helpful things that you're seeing. And I think, as I talked about earlier in communication, this pandemic time is a really big opportunity for us to connect with our loved ones, to build relationships if we're not in one, or to build our relationship with ourselves. So it's a really important time to develop our healing, to understand ourselves better, to learn new coping mechanisms to deal with stress, because we have to adapt them all the time. So if you can really pay attention to how you're doing, how you're managing your stress, how you're managing your relationships, what's working and what's not working, and then all with a vision of better understanding yourself from a compassionate perspective, you're much more likely to come out of this time with a stronger foundation for yourself and who you are, but also a stronger foundation with your partner. So I wish you a ton of courage, all the best, and healthy thoughts for the next few weeks and for how long this pandemic lasts, and in the future as well.